But even like the example of you feeling like that was a problem and then turning it into something like teaching yourself everything.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's like a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of this.
Yeah.
Thank you, doctor.
You're welcome. Okay, fine. I was a therapist before.
Oh, I so get it. I see it so completely. So glad I'm lying down.
This is Really Famous. I'm Cara Mayer Robinson, and I interview famous people. But I don't just interview them like your typical interview. I'm not really interested in those same old questions. Instead, I like to know who they really are and what they really think. Sometimes it's like listening to old friends catching up, and other times it's like eavesdropping on a therapy session. Today, my guest is Griffin Dunne. If you've been watching This Is Us, and I know you have, you know Griffin. Griffin just recently showed up as Jack's long lost brother, I guess you could say, Nicky. And yes, Griffin and I talk about This Is Us, so stay tuned for that. But we had so much more to talk about because he has such a fascinating background and history in the entertainment industry. He's been working in Hollywood for over 4 decades. He is an actor, director, and also a producer. You probably saw him on screen in films like Dallas Buyers Club, Martin Scorsese's After Hours, and An American Werewolf in London. He has also directed movies like Addicted to Love and Practical Magic. And on screen, besides the recent This Is Us role, you've probably seen him in other shows like I Love Dick, Girls, House of Lies, Red Band Society, and The Romanoffs. Now, behind the camera, he's a really fascinating guy, too. He directed and produced the documentary Joan Didion, The Center Will Not Hold, about his Aunt Joan. Yes, his aunt is Joan Didion. And that movie premiered at the New York Film Festival and is now available on Netflix. So, speaking of that documentary, I recommend you watch it. It is so riveting. I actually, when I learned that I was going to be interviewing Griffin, I did my research, and one of the first things I did was checked out that documentary and another one called Dominick Dunne After the Party. That's on Amazon. Why did I watch that? Because his father was the novelist and Vanity Fair writer Dominick Dunne. Griffin's uncle was writer John Gregory Dunne, and as I mentioned, his aunt is the one and only Joan Didion. So 2 things for you to watch: Dominick Dunne After the Party, you'll find it on Amazon, and Joan Didion, The Center Will Not Hold, on Netflix. So really, after I watched both of those, I could not wait to meet and talk to Griffin. So here we are last week, actually, very recently in New York City. I want to give a big thank you to Sofitel New York, where we sat down for this conversation. Here we are, Griffin Dunne and me, last week in New York. All right, so I hit the record button because we just start wherever and whenever we start.
Sure.
Okay, so you just came from the gym.
Yes, I did.
Do you mind holding a mic, or would you rather use a lavalier?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
It's fun. I did. You know, I was in. I'm trying to get my month back. I've had an action-packed month. I was in Paris, and then I went to France to be in Wes Anderson's movie in a little town called Angoulême.
Where's that?
It's in the Cognac district. It's sort of in the south, near Bordeaux.
Okay.
And Wes and company have sort of taken over the whole place, and it was really, really fun. And then I went to Paris, and then flew from Paris to Los Angeles direct for
the Oscars.
Well,
Am I right?
Actually, to shoot This Is Us, but it timed out perfect because Charlie Wessler, who has been he's more a brother at this point, but since we were 9 years old, we've been best friends. Produced Green Book, and so he asked me to be his date at the Oscars.
That is so cool. I saw that on Instagram the other day. I was like, wait, what? You said something like my date just won.
I know, but by the way, I also he's my best friend, but as my daughter pointed out, when I wrote BF, it means boyfriend. And I really meant best friend means BFF. So I'm sending some mixed messages to the Instagram community about my relationship with Charlie, but what the hell?
That's interesting, right? And you were his date after all.
I said that. I started it. I said his date. You know, it sounds creepier to say his escort.
But that, right. That's so interesting, though. So you actually went there. So you were going there for This Is Us, though.
I was going there to shoot This Is Us, but it timed out perfect. And Charlie had asked me, even if I wasn't in This Is Us, I would have flown out to go with him to this award. And you know, his life was so different a year and a half ago. It was just a kind of a great lesson in how quickly, you know, he was so concerned about money and the future and then.
So a year and a half ago, so that it
about
hadn't
2
been
years
released
ago.
then at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it hadn't been released.
It hadn't
yet.
been really started to be shooting. They didn't know if they were going to make it.
So when you say he didn't have enough money, you meant just for the film?
No, I meant in
real
life.
Oh, okay, that's what
I meant in life. He was like going through, you know, like, you know, pension worries, you know, middle-aged stuff, you know, like, and the fears and of you know, no employment like we all have. But I think it becomes more fearsome as you get older. So anyway, it just I bring it up as an example of how quickly life can change.
Right,
you know?
right. And I think it looks to everybody else like people in those positions, your position, his position, life is going along fine and everything's all good and there are always jobs around the corner, but that's really like not how it is.
That's so not how it is. And it's, you know, it fluctuates wildly, you know. I mean, I've been doing this a long time and there have been ups and downs all the way through and first acts and second acts and you don't deserve a third and then you get a third, you know.
Yeah. So how do you roll with that?
I go to the gym. No, you know, I try not to, after you've had your, you know, second or third decline, you try not to look at it as a decline because by that time you kind of have to look and go, you know what, I'm still making a living doing this, and I've been doing it for over 40 years, and I'm more fortunate than most, and I've done some really good work, and instead of, you know, crucifying myself, you know, just breathe. Something, you've done it before, you'll do it again.
Well, you just have a bigger perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
So you look at it as like a valley rather than a cliff and, you know, the other side of the cliff. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you've had that, right? And you've had that 4 decades. That's huge. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have so much to ask you about, by the way.
Okay.
Because I've been like doing my research on you.
All right. Well, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. But so the two things that like I can't get out of my mind are I watched 2 documentaries a couple days ago, and I was like transfixed by both. So of course, one of them is your documentary about your aunt, Joan Didion, and it's The Center Will Not Hold. And I was like, the whole time, I'm like riveted by the whole experience. But I want to ask you about making it.
Sure.
Okay, but then also the other one, it was about your dad. That one was called what? Dominick Dunne? Because you were in it a bunch of times.
Yeah, and it was called not Life of the Party.
Yeah. That was it, I think.
It's something to do with the party. I don't think it was Life of the Party. I just having a moment, but I can't remember what it is. But
I think it's Dominick Dunne, Life at the Party, maybe? Life of the Party.
Life After the Party? I don't know.
Something
we'll
like
Google
that.
it.
Right. It'll be in the show notes. Google it later. So, like, going back then 4 decades, you're saying you've been in the 40 years you've been in the industry. So that started, but you had such an interesting childhood. Like, I don't even know what to ask you about it except for the fact that, like, so you're brought up with unusual parents atypical, not unusual,
Yeah.
atypical parents, I think, very dynamic people in their own way, right? So your father was Dominick Dunne, the writer, but I didn't know he had this life before writing.
I mean, that's kind of what's interesting about him. I mean, when I was growing up, my brother and sister, my parents were extremely social. My father more so than my mother, and he was a television producer. And one of the kind of great mysteries, social mysteries, is how a television producer gave these parties for the greatest actors, directors, and producers of their day would come. And we're talking in the early 60s. And you'd have people like, David Selznick, who did Gone with the Wind, and William Wyler, and George Stevens, and then another generation of Dennis Hopper and Warren Beatty and Tuesday Weld. And these two generations of young Hollywood and old Hollywood would come to our house for these kind of elaborate parties, and they were the extremely important events for my father. And then they were divorced. My parents got divorced, and when I was growing up, I wish I knew what I knew now. I'd love to talk to George Stevens about liberating Auschwitz, but I was and Making Giant. But I was 7 years old. My dad kept these scrapbooks, which I have now, and they're about 20 pounds each. They're these big leather-bound books of photographs that he took. He was actually a very good photographer, and he took pictures of all these people in his house as if he couldn't believe it, and the other parties that he went to, and he ironed the photos into his scrapbooks, and the invitations that would come, and the thank you notes, and the from all the big stars of the day, and so he just lost my train of thought.
So you were saying if you were only 7,
yeah.
right? But
so
today,
anyway, now
I
look at these books, and I can't get over it. I'm so grateful.
Just watching that documentary, I could not believe what went on in your house.
Well, I'm so grateful he did take pictures and iron. I used to make fun of him when I was a little kid, when I was a teenager. But they're the most, they're artifacts of a period in history, in Hollywood history, that is generally ignored. It's kind of because it's a period when, giants like George Stevens and direct, Billy Wilder and all these, Joseph Cotton and all the actors who were big stars in the 40s and 50s were kind of aging and in a decline, and we were just 4 years from The Graduate and Easy Rider that would redefine movies forever.
Right. Cary Grant was another name that was there, remember?
Yeah.
Like they showed people, they've had some video footage, right, of these parties. Somebody must have been filming a little bit here and there.
Yeah, I didn't see too many. No, there were Roddy McDowall's films were in that.
Oh, okay.
Roddy McDowall had a camera. He was also like my dad, photographed everything. With his, he had a little Bolex. And you can see all those films on YouTube.
That is
you just
so
put
cool.
in,
Really? Where?
You just put in Roddy McDowall, or if you wanted to see like the parties that he gave that my dad and mom were at, you put in his name, or you put in Roddy McDowall and Tuesday Weld. You just put in Roddy McDowall home movies.
I'm so gonna do that.
And it's a window into. It's some of the most fascinating footage of this very period of Hollywood I'm talking about.
I really couldn't even
believe
it.
And they're all in color, and there are pictures of, films of Jane Fonda in a bikini, and
But you weren't there for those parties, right? Because
these are the beach things that Roddy shot. I'm throughout the film.
Okay.
My brother and sister are with our dog. We had a house next door to him. This was in Malibu Colony. So I'm there as a little kid running in and out of frame. But
wait, you had a house next door to who?
Roddy McDowall.
Oh, okay.
Who was making these films?
Okay, I thought you were saying, because I remember something like somebody was saying that the nanny would take you to a hotel.
That would be when we were at our regular house. You know, we just they rented a house in the summer. That's where the Roddy McDowall movies are. But when they gave really big parties, the nanny would, we'd get into our PJs and have our homework, and, you know, the nanny would take us and check us into a hotel. And we go to school the next morning. And, yeah.
So what did you think of that then, and what do you think of it now?
Well, I think, you know, I'm a father now. It's just the most absurd thing I could imagine. At the time, it seemed kind of normal because, you know, it came about because sometimes their parties would be so loud, and they would go on. People partied really hard then, you know, on school nights, and they would, like, you know, smoke and drink and laugh and get into fights and have adulterous affairs and do all sorts of bad, you know, naughty behavior that would go on till like 4 a.m. And I would be, you know, my brother and sister and I would be upstairs, and we would hear it, you know. And then these adults would then, you know, get up and go to the studio at 8 a.m. with these roaring hangovers. And we would go to school, you know, yawning through classes.
Right.
So I think the hotel idea got instituted.
That's wild. So how did that affect you, do you think, growing up? Just that whole, like, environment that you were in. I heard you also saying on the documentary that, like, you always felt like there was something wrong with your dad. He was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So, like, it was just such, I don't know, how did your childhood affect you?
Well, I knew it was, you know, my dad was a very different person then than he became, you know, when I became an adult. And, you know, even as a little kid, I just, you know, he was, the things that were really important to him, all this socializing and name dropping and drinking, and it was kind of embarrassing to me. You know, I just knew it was it just felt phony to me. So I was, you know, I didn't, I sided very much with my mother. It was a far more genuine person. And she couldn't take all this partying after a while, and you know what his value system was and everything. So she divorced, and I remember being somewhat relieved by that. You know, having said that, you know, when their divorce happened, you know, he suffered horribly, my dad, and eventually stopped drinking, and you know, was drummed out of Hollywood and lost all of his money, and sold all of these belongings, these Limoges plates and all his Astor and Turnbull shirts, and, you know, had a garage sale. It was rather humiliating, and sold all of these treasured objects that, you know, he lived and died by owning, and moved to Oregon, or drove in the direction of Oregon where his car broke down, you know, and kind of like started over. You know, just like everything had been stripped away, and when he came out, what was revealed was something that was very genuine about him. And he started over, and he moved to New York, and he lived in an apartment that was smaller than the smallest apartment I ever lived in, as, you know, a waiter actor, and without the slightest complaint.
Mm-hmm. So he really had like two lives almost, and
Complete.
That one big life in the middle was probably interfering with whatever
wherever you're supposed to be going.
Yeah.
But it also kind of laid ground for the kind of person he did become. I mean, all that socializing turned out to be quite useful when he became a writer and a journalist. You know, those people that who you know, came to his home and drank his booze, and he would go to their homes, and they were such good friends until they all dumped him. once he became a writer, they became really interesting sources for stories about OJ or the Menendez or whoever he was writing about.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So there's like a purpose. It serves.
It turned out to be a purpose.
Sure.
Yeah.
But getting back to you and how it impacted you. So how did that change the direction, or not really change, but how did that set the path for you?
It made me from the moment I first saw New York. I must have been 9 years old. I just counted the days until I could move to New York. And get out of Los Angeles and get out of that, kind of Hollywood party
vibe
environment, and I wanted to be I wanted to be an actor, but I didn't want to be doing stupid television shows, like my dad produced, and so I came to New York when I was 18. Just as soon as it was legally possible, I was out the door.
Yeah.
Came here.
And you started right away, and you were pretty successful right away.
No. I came to New York. I came to New York at 18. I went to the Neighborhood Playhouse. I only went there for a year, and then I, was like did all the struggling rite of passage things an actor is supposed to do, and was a waiter, and
Where were you a waiter?
I was a waiter at Beefsteak Charlie's.
Nice.
I was a waiter at Joe Allen's for almost a week before they fired me because I lied. I said I'd been a waiter before.
It was revealed pretty quickly that you didn't
very
have those
quickly
skills.
When somebody asked for oil and vinegar for their salad, instead of bringing out the oil and vinegar, I took their salad back to the kitchen and put it on myself. And brought it out. They went, "Where'd you go with my salad?" I thought you wanted oil and vinegar on it.
So you took it off their table?
I took it off their table. And Joe Allen saw this and went, "You've never waited at a table in your life." I went, "Yeah, I know."
So maybe he would have trained you.
You're out of here, kid.
For the lie.
But something like an open bar, a salad bar at Beefsteak Charlie's, I could handle. But I was also an usher, a popcorn concessionaire at Radio City Music Hall.
That's cool.
That was my favorite non-working job, and I fed the camels who did the nativity scene.
At the spectacular.
And I loved working at Radio City Music Hall, and then I would flirt with the Rockettes, and who were much older once you got closer to them, and that was kind of a fun job, but it wasn't. I was doing these kind of jobs, and then a little off Broadway, and I did the White Album, David Rimmer's thing at Playwrights Horizons, his play. And then a play called Coming Attractions that Ted Talley wrote. And then I was starting to
get your momentum,
momentum going. And then went in to meet John Landis. Without even reading, after a 10-minute conversation, or maybe 15, he offered me this part. I'll never understand why. From this conversation in American Werewolf in London. Then I was totally supporting myself as an actor.
So it doesn't sound like it was such a long struggle.
Oh, I didn't say it was.
Oh, okay. But it didn't just happen like that.
It didn't happen like that. It took 3 years or something.
Okay.
Not so bad.
Which, right, in the grand scheme of things, is not so bad.
Not so bad at all.
And then eventually you're also hired by Martin Scorsese.
Yes. Well, we had technically, I think we hired him because we had the script, Amy Robinson and I.
Interesting. Okay.
And we found the script, or Amy found it, and at Sundance, and we optioned it. And Amy Robinson played Teresa in Mean Streets, and with Harvey and Bob, and so she knew Marty and sent him the script. And that's how Marty got involved.
Got it. That is very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's big. And there are a lot of interesting actors in that movie, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of that time.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, Terry Garr was in it.
That's right.
And...
Terry Garr, Rosanna Arquette, John Hurd.
Yeah.
Will Patton, Linda Ferrantino, Cheech and Chong. Yeah.
So when we were coming upstairs to the room just now, you were talking about how you went to see, I'm kind of changing the topic, but kind of not. You were going to see Network on Broadway, which is Tony Goldwyn and Bryan Cranston and Tatiana Maslany. It's a great show on Broadway right now.
Yeah,
and we were talking about, and you said you went with friends who are actors, right?
Yeah.
So you have your own acting community that's part of like New York based, I would imagine, right? Is that kind of where it is for you? Like, did you get to know a lot of actors as you were all going through these similar things, or what? Like you said, you're friends with Tony Goldwyn.
Yeah. I think oddly when I came to New York, there weren't, and after the Neighborhood Playhouse, there weren't many other people my age in New York. They were all in college and stuff like that. And I wasn't really working that much as an actor, in these first few years. And my earlier friends seemed to be writers, who were like journalists, and a guy named Jesse Kornbluth and Marie Brenner, who's now a great Vanity Fair writer. They were all writing for the New York Magazine and different things, and they sort of adopted me, and from that world I met mostly writers. Oddly,
that's so interesting because you grew up with writers.
And I grew up. Well, I grew up with. My dad wasn't a writer until much later. My aunt and uncle were writers.
Yeah, aunt and uncle, right? Yeah. So Joan Didion and your uncle.
Yeah, exactly.
John.
I ended up in journalists, and who I admired enormously what they did. And so it was kind of funny that I was actually, that my earlier friends seemed to be writers and journalists, in the same field that they were in.
So this is interesting too, because I'm feeling like journalism is almost it might have been refreshing to you to admire them because it's the opposite of like that Hollywood.
Exactly.
Yes?
Yeah. That's what I thought I would be doing. But
So you thought you'd be a journalist?
I did. But I also thought in order to do that, I had to have more of a formal education. And I was a terrible student and a very undisciplined student, and was kicked out of high school in my junior year and sort of never completed it, which I was not only not proud, I was ashamed of it. So when I was with these, clever New York writer friends, I had a reading disability. I had dyslexia. Suddenly the dyslexia that held me back in school just disappeared. And I became this sort of voracious reader, mainly to catch up on what I should have read in school, or what my friends were reading and talking about, so that I wouldn't be found out as a high school dropout. And that kind of pressure kind of made me this sort of ambitious autodidact, who got, was always, don't let him find out, I'm illiterate and an uneducated guy. That I sort of self-educated myself really quickly.
It's so interesting. You seem educated, self-educated, I guess you're telling me, but so did they were you diagnosed with dyslexia, or did you figure it out later?
Oh, no.
You were?
Yeah, I was diagnosed after, I guess, when I was around 12 or 13.
Because you're lucky, because not a lot of there are so many kids even now who have dyslexia who aren't diagnosed.
Yeah.
And then especially years ago, fewer.
Yeah, I was diagnosed as being stupid for a long time.
But that's
and even
wrong.
when I had dyslexia, it was still looked at like I was a handicapped creature, and I was held back a year, and it was relatively new. It wasn't like a relief, like, oh wow, this is so great.
That all makes sense, right?
It was still a struggle, and So it was, and also, I went to very kind of restrictive all boys schools where education was pure drudgery anyway. So, I just couldn't wait to get out of school.
So how did your parents handle school with you and dyslexia?
They, I think, they were of a generation where, unlike, say, when I'm a parent and my friends who have kids, where everything our child does is just so fascinating and we're all so involved and, bragging about them all the time. And, every little accomplishment is like genius. They were completely, my sort of education was just sort of arbitrary. It was to them. It was, we paid for the school, however it works out. There was no real, investment in looking at my report card or any of that stuff. It would be and it would, I was in boarding school from the time I was 11.
Oh, you were in boarding school.
Yeah, it was an all boys boarding school, and so we had to. It was insanely strict, and it was established in 1866. So we're in this old study hall that had 100 desks in it with carvings from other kids whose fathers were in the Civil War and stuff. It was a really old school, and we had to write 2 letters a week to our parents, and we had to hold them up so that the teacher, at the front of the class of this enormous study hall, you had to show it had to be a page and a half. You showed him the print on the first page, and then the second page, the half thing, and he couldn't read it from that far, and he just point and so I realized, why am I going through a page and a half twice a week? I got nothing to say, so I would just do just chicken scratches that looked like writing from 50 feet away, and I would hold it up, and then he'd go, okay, great, signal, put it in an envelope. And this went on for 3 years, and then when my mom, I'm now in my 20s, and my mom is moving houses and I'm helping her move, I pull this drawer and there are just hundreds of letters from me from this school. And I went, oh my God, this is so, I'm going to see what I was like when I was 11 and the things I talked about. And I opened one up and I hadn't thought of the chicken scratch in forever. And it's like, I went, huh? What? And then I picked up another pile and they're not even opened after a while.
So she knew. She's like, okay. Well,
my mom just threw them in a drawer.
But it's funny, she never told you or asked you,
no,
hey, Griffin, what's up with this?
I brought in a pile and I put it on her bed and I went, Mom, I'm reading were you concerned?
Right.
You were getting 2 of these a week. You never brought it up? She said, I just thought you didn't have that much to say.
That is so funny. And then she kept them, no less.
She kept them, sentimental fool that she was.
So you must have been pretty insecure then, I would think, with this whole thing of feeling like I didn't finish school, I'm going to be found out. And you decide to hang out with people who are pretty bright and accomplished.
Yeah.
Which almost makes you almost walked into this thing to make it even harder.
Yeah.
Right? But you chose to.
I did indeed. I mean, I was drawn to it.
Mm-hmm. And then you figured I would do, so you taught yourself.
Yeah. and then when I started to work, then I became more in the, friends who were actors and in the actor community, and, still had my writer friends, and the people I mentioned, are still in my life today. And, it just sort of broadened out, but I ended up, not just with actors, but also, I was interested in behind the, making movies as much as being in them, as was Amy Robinson. And we had a third partner who was also an actor, who was in Animal House, played Niedermeyer, named Mark Metcalf. And the three of us started a production company. And that's how we made our first movie as producers. It was called Chilly Scenes of Winter, with John Hurd, who eventually ended up in After Hours with us too. Yeah.
So you, as in, you're still doing that too, obviously. So
Yeah,
this brings
yeah.
us circles back to the documentary you did about your aunt,
Right.
who was also a writer,
Yeah.
a journalist, and what would you call her? A journalist, I guess, right? A novelist? No.
Well, she writes both.
So both.
She writes both, but I think.
But she's wrote memoirs though too, right? Not so much novels, or right?
Yeah, she's written novels, but essays, cultural essays, about.
Yeah.
And then of course two very personal memoirs about loss: Year of Magical Thinking and Blue Nights, about the losses in her family.
So you asked her. I read somewhere that you asked her if you could do a film about her and her life, and she said like yes at some point, but like later down the road or something.
No, we had done. She asked me to do. When you come out with a book, they like to have a video accompaniment to it. So she asked if I would do that for Blue Nights, and we had a ball doing this, and we went on locations, and she loved being pilot into the van with the crew, and then going to another place and setting up, and then having lunch with the crew were like blown away that they're working with Joan.
Totally, I can only imagine.
They were like
What?
fighting for who gets to sit next to her and during lunch. And, to push my luck, I realized there'd never been a doc about her by her choice. She'd been asked, of course, many times. And I said, what do you think about making this as, taking this to the next level? Let's about making this as a feature. And she went, okay. And that was the strongest endorsement I had.
Right, because she is a woman of few words.
It's few words,
right?
exactly. And it was I just ran with the okay.
Uh-huh.
But also from that moment I thought, my God, what have I done? I'm taking on telling the story of someone who means a great deal to a great deal of people. And, they have a very personal relationship to her writing. And, would be looking very, critically on how I would be, portraying their idol. And she's influenced so many people, not just writers, of which there are many, but also particularly young women, and kind of how to kind of lead their lives, and moving to New York and taking kind of responsibility for their decisions, and a kind of Western no-nonsense ethic that she has, I think, has influenced a lot of people when they read her work.
That is huge. And then plus even just the undertaking of taking someone's entire life and then like boiling it down to an hour and a half or like max 2 hours or something.
Yeah, exactly.
That seems to me like I would be so overwhelmed by that. It would like crush me.
Yeah, well, for her to see it was overwhelming. The first thing, when I had the roughest of assemblies, it was over 3 hours, and I wanted to make sure that she knew what I was doing, kind of the stage I was at, which I probably wouldn't do with a subject if it was somebody else, to show them something so rough, but I wanted her to see it. So in that, it had, all sorts of things that didn't make it in the movie, but were, because they were actually they were so particular to, instead of the big story of Joan, it was much more John and Joan and me and Dad and Mom and my brother and my sister and Quintana and our interrelations of our two families. So there was that layer on top of everything else. And so for her to see it, was really and to know that there was like all these people, the editors and research people and all the people it takes to make a movie like this, all the effort that went into finding out stuff about her life and we found footage she'd never seen before, archival stuff, and and then putting it to music. So it was really overwhelming for her to see it for the first time. It was very emotional for both of us. And I said, I want to stop it. I'll stop it at the halfway point. We can take a bathroom break. And I hit the bar to stop it. And she went, "What are you doing?" I went, "Well, I thought we could take it." She goes, "Hit that thing. Just keep going. Keep going."
That's a really good sign.
Yeah.
And that must have been emotional, but also you probably felt.
Oh, I was so relieved.
Right?
Yeah. And proud and and grateful I was able to do it.
Yeah. And it seems like you see yourself in there, and like you're treating her so well and so nicely with such love, and it's like it's amazing. It's amazing to watch. I think it's a great film because you're not just seeing her and her life, but you are also seeing that family thing that you wouldn't see if you weren't the person making it.
Yeah.
So your two families were pretty close.
Yeah, very.
All along. And you and she were pretty close since you were little?
Yeah. With John as well. I mean, they were very much of a team. So, but for whatever reason, they particularly liked me. I don't, from a really young age. So.
You mean you versus your brother and your sister?
Yeah, I was the oldest, but I also kind of like got what they were doing first before everything, and they gave a party once when I was maybe 11 or 12, and I was obsessed with Janis Joplin at the time, and they gave a party, and they were in Hollywood Hills for Tom Wolfe, who had just come out with Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, and Joan called my mom and said, "Why don't you bring Griffin?" And I mean, I couldn't believe it, and I fretted about what to wear, and I told my mom, when we get there, walk away, because I want to be, in case I meet Janis, I don't want her to find out that I'm here with my mother, which I felt was a distinct possibility.
Uh-huh.
And but anyway, I ended up. It was a very. It made a huge impression on me this night, and then so years later, I made it as a short film. And it's called The Duke of Groove. It's on Vimeo now. You can see it that way. But it's the very first thing I ever directed, and I got nominated for an Academy Award, and that's how I became a director from this party. So it was like all roads. You just use everything.
Yeah, everything is what is it?
Everything is copy.
Copy. That's Nora Ephron, right?
Yeah.
Everything is copy.
But it's
true.
What?
It's true.
Oh yeah. I mean, who was, by the way, a great friend of my both my aunt and uncle as well. Joan and John, who was a great journalist as well. They, as Joan says in the doc, you use what you have, and when Joan was writing about wanting to divorce John during a difficult time in their marriage, John edited the article. They understood that.
So interesting, yes. Yeah, it was all part of it, and you just went with it, worked with it.
Exactly.
Interesting. So were you close to your brother and your sister both growing up?
Oh, very much, yeah.
All three of you.
Mm-hmm.
So were you kind of like in it together?
Oh, all
that
the time.
mentality?
Totally.
And then, so as you grew up, you stayed kind of...
Absolutely.
And your sister was an actor.
Yeah, actress, yeah. Actress, yeah.
What is it?
You
I
know,
always think about it now. I
don't know why
know.
actress just flew out of my mouth, but it, it works both ways. I hope it's not offensive now to say actress, but she was certainly an actor. If that's works for both, it works for me. And a really good one.
Yeah. I mean, she stands out to me in Poltergeist.
Yeah.
That scene where she got dropped off at home at the end.
Yeah, that's the what's happening.
That to me is the entire... I remember exactly what's happening. To me, that was the moment that I felt that whole movie in my bones.
Yeah. Yeah, they use that in the ads all the time.
So that was a hard time, obviously, what happened.
Yeah.
How old were you when she died?
I was 24.
How old was your brother?
I'm sorry, I was 26. My brother was 24. When my sister was killed, she was 22.
So how did that change? That was a turning point, I guess. I mean, certainly for your
for
family.
All of us. Well, my mother was extremely strong woman who suffered from multiple sclerosis and was in a wheelchair and was very, very shy. And we went through a legal system that did not do her justice. And the killer got 3 years. But it transformed both my parents into becoming victims' rights advocates. Particularly my mother, who would go on television, which is just like the most unheard of thing in the world.
Because she was shy, man.
Because she was shy, and also so adverse to publicity and attention coming her way, would wheel onto these talk shows and talk about what happened and talk about domestic violence and the injustices that particularly toward women in the court system, the inequities of the leniency that would be shown toward a man, and the way they would victimize the woman who was at the center of the abuse and drag and defame her memory at the cost of getting the killer or the assault person off, and a lot of laws were changed that my mother was responsible for. One is called Marcy's Law, which is now a national law, but it was a California law. Before until my mom got this passed, if a killer was out on parole, they wouldn't even have the courtesy to let the family who he's killed let them know. And this came about because one of my mother's closest friends, who also lost a child, she found out that the killer of her daughter was out by running him in a grocery store, and the guy taunted her. And that led to this law being changed, and another of that we just now take for granted.
Right. It's
they're like
it
just
seems
common
like, what do you mean
sense.
that was even okay?
Yeah.
That was not even a...
Exactly. So she became, and then and obviously my father, became, not just from writing this article called Justice in Vanity Fair, which is the very first thing he ever published, which really opened people's eyes to what a family goes through in the day-to-day if they choose to attend a trial, and also the flaws in the judicial system. Nobody had ever written like that before.
Right.
Nobody had ever sort of seen that, and it led to him, of course, taking on some pretty big guys with who like to get away with murder, and they have a really dream team defenses, and he continued to write and fight and write in a biased way. He never said he wasn't biased, but whenever a family lost somebody and there was a murder had taken place, and then the killers would suit up with the best attorneys and try to get away with it, he'd be all over them.
Yeah. It outraged him, it seemed like.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm getting a little picture of the fact that, like, all of you have taken, like, whenever there's sort of tragedy or a big problem in your life, you've all kind of figured out a way to make something positive from it.
I think that's right.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's
like a family trait or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I guess it's a matter of survival.
Yeah,
as well,
but I mean,
you know.
yeah.
But,
not everybody would take that. Would be able to do that, even if they thought to.
Yeah. Well, I guess not. I guess not. But it's sort of the only way to sort of kind of get through it. You know, it doesn't seem like you're doing something positive really at the time.
Right. But even like the example of you feeling like not finishing school and feeling like that was a problem and then turning it into something like teaching yourself everything.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's like a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of this.
Yeah.
Thank you, doctor.
You're welcome. Okay, fine. I was a therapist before.
Oh, I so get it. I see it so completely. So glad I'm lying down.
It is a perfect environment for that. But I'm always looking for threads like that because it's especially when and it just came to the surface. Like this is so obvious that you all have it, and you're probably passing it down to you have a daughter.
I do. Who's an actress, Hannah Dunne, really talented young actress, and I'm hoping it's in her DNA too.
I bet it is. But I
think
don't know that
she's a very strong young lady.
Really? What's she like?
She's very instinctual actress and singer. She got an incredible voice, unlike anybody in our family. I don't know how Bessie Smith got in there. She's like it's just a big voice and bluesy ballad torch singing kind of a voice. We've never had a singer in the family before.
Maybe way back, you just didn't know it.
Somewhere way back there, we don't know where.
But she's got it.
But yeah, she's got that going, and is hard worker.
And are you married?
I'm not.
You're not married. Okay. So what's your life like now?
Well, life is good.
Yeah.
I'm going to Paris and doing Wes Anderson movies and shooting This Is Us. And
so let's talk about This Is Us.
Stuff.
Because like everybody loves This Is Us, right?
They
well,
sure
not
do.
everybody, but a lot of people.
Yeah,
love This Is Us.
It sure feels like everybody. Cause I don't think I've ever done anything that this many people have seen before.
Yes, it's a massive scale.
And the ones I don't even. The people, I don't know. I'm sure people don't like it. I have yet to meet them, but I've certainly met people, in my, Tony opinionated little elite world of, New Yorkers who haven't really. Oh, we haven't had a chance to see it yet. There are a lot of those in New York, but So and then other people say, I didn't like it, and then they are so ashamed they cried so hard. So, but anyway, I was a fan of the show before I did the show, and it was a very unexpected thing to happen.
For them to call you and say, "Play Jack's assumed dead brother."
Yes, exactly. And Jack's assumed dead brother.
Right.
And play him 15 years older than you really are. And, it was a great part to, be this alcoholic diabetic living in a trailer. And
it was very interesting. I have to tell you, like, that's not... that character that you're playing is not one of their typical characters, like, at all. It's really... like you're coming in and very much, is it okay for me to say this? Like unlikable, right?
Yeah.
Like it's hard to feel for you, I feel like, you meaning him.
Yeah, I understand.
Which is interesting because I don't think they really like to do that about anybody.
Yeah. I think that's kind of why the character sort of worked. It was it was sort of in contrast.
Yeah.
And it also, gives me as an actor, somewhere to go, a starting point, and then there'll be an arc, and I don't know what that is, and I think I'm going to be sticking around.
Are you? So
I think I can say that because I've heard the producers tell that to the trades, so I can't say any more than that. But
right. So, but when you were out there for the Oscars, that I feel like that was after you were already on.
It was. It was another episode.
Oh, so you already filmed another episode? Is that what you're saying? That hasn't aired yet?
Correct.
Oh, nice. And now you're saying, but there's probably even more than that.
That's what I don't know.
I know you don't want to. You don't want to overstate or whatever you don't want to do. I got it.
There's a lot of secrecy around the show that I feel. I hope I haven't betrayed anyone by even just saying that.
Right. I doubt that you have, but I'm just going to flip it back to nothing that you're going to reveal. But to me, that first episode, the pilot of that show, was so good.
Yeah.
I think that's what that show is really good at, is like surprising twists that you would never see coming.
Absolutely right.
And they did that in the pilot, and it was one of the best pilots that I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
Even though it was a couple years
too.
ago. Yeah. So that was good. Okay, so this is so you're going to go back and forth, but you're going to stay in the city.
Yep.
And you're like New Yorker. That's it. You're still.
Yeah.
You're in for the long haul.
Yeah,
here?
I've got. Oh yeah. I mean, this is definitely my home. I have friends in Los Angeles. Really good friends that I grew up with, and so I don't have a Woody Allen I hate LA kind of a thing going on, but I definitely am an East Coast person, and. As cold as it is out there, I'd prefer that.
I know, and it is cold out there.
And it is cold.
But it's raining in LA right now.
Yeah.
So think about that.
I'm okay with that too.
So a big life lesson that you've had over the years. What would you say? One of your biggest.
I would say not to spend too much time trying to. I spent too much time. I don't regret, I guess, but but I recognize I spent an awful lot of time worrying about things I can't control, and anticipating, situations as if they're going to be realized, and instead of just leaving myself open and not spend all that time worrying. It's like if you're scared of going to the dentist, it's the subway ride to the dentist. It's the sitting down in the chair. It's, just in anticipation of, the drilling and the sounds. That's actually worse than actually having the actual dental appointment. So, if that happens to be your phobia, which happens to be mine.
Please, I hate sitting in the chair. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm thinking to myself, I agree with you on anticipation, but I don't like actually being in that chair either.
I'm just saying, in comparison, the actual chair, the actual process, is
not as bad.
Is not as bad as
sure,
the anticipation. Though? Well, yeah, I think because I used to think, well, I've done my homework, I've suffered enough. In anticipation of how bad this is going to be. Yeah. And it usually outweighs what the actual thing is.
And I feel like I agree with you on all things except the dentist.
Yeah, well, okay. All right. Well, that's all I got.
For some reason, it's that one thing of the dentist being in the chair that I think that is unpleasant.
A firing squad. You're on your way. It's not going to be getting killed and shot by 12 guys. Isn't going to be as bad as, being walked through the angry mob. To be tied off at the post. Right.
Not even close. I agree with you on that. But so you're a worrier, though, then, by nature, do you think?
Yeah, I think I spent too much time worrying. I used to think it was I'm also Catholic, so, and not by choice, just by DNA. So I think it was a penance. I grew up, thinking there had to be a certain cost for good things. You had to earn good things by... which is all bullshit.
Right. Earn good things with bad things.
Yeah, earn good thing. You paying your dues, getting your getting your worry and your self-flagellation into appreciate the good thing. I drop all that thinking.
So have you gotten a little bit of a handle on it?
Yeah, I think I have.
How?
I just don't. Worry that much because I don't try to anticipate what's going to happen and think 12 moves ahead for either good or bad and just sort of I've had, particularly in the past few years, so many nice surprises I could never have anticipated, and I don't know why the good things happen. I don't try to analyze or question that either, you know. Sort of the less I pick at a scab, the quicker it heals.
And that just happened naturally, that you got to that point, like over time?
Over time.
Any regrets?
Yeah, I'm sure. Nothing that leaps to mind, and if they were real bad ones, I never would bring them up.
So you wouldn't answer the question then. If I were to ask you what's your biggest secret, you wouldn't answer that question?
No, I wouldn't. I was about to make some incredibly macabre joke.
You can make it.
No, but it was even too dark for me. No. I mean, for the most part, no. I didn't have too many regrets.
That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that you hope happens or you will do, and I'm not just talking about what's the dream job of yours. That's not really what I mean. But like anything just in life big that you hope for, or small.
Yeah. You know, I'd like to just keep. I'd like to keep. Work is really important, but I'd like to keep, you know, sort of challenging myself. I'd like to, you know, make things that, you know, I picture happening to have them, you know, be realized. You know, I have a house upstate that I really like, and you know, I want to have time to enjoy being there, and
Where's your house upstate?
In Dutchess County.
Okay.
Anyway, for a rich, full life, I don't want, you know, things to sort of slow down. I've got a lot of good friends, and, you know, a big dining room table in upstate that is always filled with a lot of people and a lot of laughing.
So you bring people there?
Yeah, but I also got a lot of friends who all live up there, too.
Who live up there? So you have friends everywhere, really, then? Because you grew up with people who are still in California. You've got your New York friends.
I do. And my friends in upstate are actually New Yorkers who either stayed with me for a weekend and went to a realtor the next day and bought a house near me.
Okay.
We have like a community of people who started in the city, and one thing they have in common, they either stayed with me or Charlie, who I was just talking about earlier, who also has lived on my property. And so, yeah, we got a nice little community up there.
So I'm just going to give you another little analysis here, because I also am noticing that you are good at friendships, it sounds like, at like maintaining long, I'm guessing like true, genuine relationships with people, different people. And that may be something that you developed as a child too.
Yeah,
or that you saw and then wanted maybe something different or similar. You know what I mean? It's almost, I don't know. I just keep picturing you growing up with all these people coming in and out, but it's not that same kind of thing though. It seems like much more on a deeper level.
You're right. I mean, I have, besides, you know, Charlie goes back since I was 10, you know, my really close friends go back, you know, early 80s, a lot of them. And after that, you know, 20 years. And, yeah, I've got a lot of good friends who have been friends for a long time.
So what is that about?
It's about sort of stability, I guess, you know, and it gives you an anchor, you know. I think, you know, and also, quite honestly, as you get older, you don't really have time to switch out friends, and you're not constantly meeting new people, and so it's a comfort level as well, you know.
Yes, but I think not everybody can do that. So are you sort of the one are you like the glue, you know what I'm saying, who keeps the friendships going? Or is everybody who you're friends with similar in that way?
I think everybody's similar. Yeah. I think we all kind of share that characteristic.
So you're also probably drawn to, or you have been drawn to people like that. And it is that stability.
Yeah, exactly.
That you're talking about. Very interesting. So I'll close with my favorite question.
Go ahead.
Which is, it has two parts. The first one is, what is the image that many people have of you? Like, who do they think Griffin Dunne is?
Yeah. I actually don't know, except I think as I've gotten old, the kind of actor I was to the kind of actor I am now, I think kind of lines up maybe with the perception. When I was a younger actor, I was kind of comedically put upon, and kind of neurotic and high strung. And lately, as an actor, I'm mostly like kind of older sage guy, cool guy. I don't think of myself as particularly cool, but I kind of like Mr. Experience. He's done a lot, kind of thing. That's just an extremely self-conscious answer to your self-conscious question.
It is a self-conscious question. You have to be.
So I actually don't know or dwell on too much.
Okay, so then
That's the thing.
Let's see how you feel about part two, which is who is
the really guy?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
you
like
anticipated
it. Yeah, I could see that. I saw it coming.
Darn.
It's like having the porn star name, Who am I? God. I mean, if I could tell you that, I'm a work in progress. I'm just constantly, I'm a curious person, and I think, as we talked, I think a good friend, and a good dad, I hope, and with a variety of different talents. So somewhere in there, I sound fantastic.
I think you are fantastic.
Okay.
How about that? Okay, thank you, Griffin. That was Griffin Dunne. Want to see my reaction to this interview? Follow me on Instagram. Just go to instagram.com/reallyfamouspodcast. I posted a little video there. In fact, if you're not already following me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, now is definitely the time. I just flew to Los Angeles, I'm based in New York, to record a whole lot of new interviews, and I'm documenting all my adventures in Hollywood. Check me out all week behind the scenes. On Instagram, I'm at Really Famous Podcast. On Twitter, I'm Kara1to1. On Facebook, I'm Kara Mayer Robinson. On YouTube, I'm Really Famous. Or to make things easier, just click in today's show notes for easy links to each platform. And don't forget to comment, message me. Let me know what you're thinking about my adventures on the West Coast. I'm Kara Mayer Robinson. Thanks for listening to Really Famous. So, Griffin, let's get to some quick answers. Ready?
Okay.
What's your guilty pleasure?
Too much Netflix, I guess. I'm watching a show that has long passed its sort of charm, but I keep coming back to it, called The Norseman, on Netflix, that is about these Vikings. It's sort of like a Game of Thrones, but funny, and these Vikings are so sensitive, and they can't get it up when they're trying to rape and pillage, and they're constantly questioning their values, and I don't know, it's just silly and really funny.
And you highly recommend it on Netflix.
I do recommend it, yeah.
And of course on Netflix you can also watch your documentary.
Oh yeah, let's plug that.
Let's do that.
Yeah, Center Will Not Hold, Joan Didion, Netflix. Joan Didion, The Center Will Not Hold.
What else are you watching on Netflix?
Sabura.
Wait, did you watch Gomorrah?
And I watched Gomorrah.
Okay, the series,
yeah,
La Serie?
Yeah.
Do you disagree with me that is maybe one of the best shows ever created?
I do not disagree with you. I thought it was amazing, which is why I watched Sabura as well. I mean, it's I love the way they combine politics, of Rome as if it's a small town. With so much at stake in the Vatican and the corruption in the Vatican and the city councils, and then of course the mobsters killing each other for territory. It's so specific and so real.
So Gomorrah, however, how many seasons have we seen in the U.S.? I want to say 3.
Yeah, I don't think
or
more
may
than
just
that.
be 2 because
I think 2.
They're already doing. I think they already aired 3 and they're working on 4, and we don't even have 3 here yet.
I don't think we have 3 either. Yeah.
I recommend Gomorrah to like everybody. It's
Yeah.
been on the podcast a million times because it's like a
Oh, no,
masterful
it's
chess game.
Totally.
Okay.
And the movie is great, and the soundtrack to the movie is great.
I'd never even thought about that.
Yeah, I have it. It's fantastic.
Okay, what else are you watching? Are you watching anything on network TV?
A show called This Is Us. I tune in to watch myself. What else in network? I don't. I mean, it's not like I'm, I just have one of those televisions that with iTunes, and it's just nothing is regular. It's a whole new
Yeah, it's
medium,
a smart TV, and you have your own little.
The thing
do you go
is,
to Amazon?
It's smarter than me. This TV.
Like Prime?
I go to Amazon. Like everybody has said this. There's so much that I sometimes just turn it off and just go back to reading.
What are you reading?
Right now, I'm reading a book that Don Winslow wrote called The Border. It's it's his more recent book. Winslow's a great writer. Talk very much if you like Gomorrah. He's like an American writer who writes about the cartel, Mexican cartel, as if it's Gomorrah. And it's about the families, but it's also about the political structure of how dope comes into this country, and the role that politicians play and their hypocrisies that they do, and it's an epic book.
All right, so what is that one called?
This is called The Border.
Okay, The Border.
And he has a book about...
Oh, yeah. Was he on 60 Minutes or something a few weeks ago?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think he was. He was like, he spent a lot of time actually walking the border over the years. He's written a bunch of books.
He's written a bunch of books. And this is sort of his specialty. And he's also writes... He has a great book called The Force, which is about New York cops. That's also... epic, about politics and the political structure and the political machinery and how it affects just the day-to-day life of a beat cop.
Okay. What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
I used to make coffee, but now that stupid ass phone is by my bed, which I use to set the alarm, and I look and see who called or what's on the news, or what did I miss in the 8 hours I was hopefully sleeping? It's not a good look.
It's better to go to Dwayne Reed and get an alarm clock or something.
I did. I just got an alarm clock, and then I put the phone in the other room. So I'm just giving you an honest answer.
Right,
of what
because
it has
you
been.
and everybody, by the way.
Yeah,
it's not just you.
It's not. And I'm hurting myself somewhere, and I'm hurting myself here. From doing that crap.
I agree. I do the same thing, and I think the same thing. I know the same thing. I'm telling you to buy the alarm clock, but I don't have the alarm clock.
I have the alarm clock, and I did it. I've been very concerned about it.
Okay, that's good. And what's the last thing you do before you go to sleep?
I call my dog to get on the bed, Mary. And then she gets on, and then I have, pillows here in this king-size bed, and I'm on my side, and she just puts her head on the 2 pillows.
That's
here,
very sweet.
And, we go to sleep like an old married couple. It's not as creepy as it sounds. It's really very sweet.